July 4th, 1187, the hills above the Sea of Galilee. You are a knight of the kingdom of Jerusalem, and you have not had water since yesterday. The sun is climbing, the steel is heating. Your mouth is so dry you can no longer swallow, and all around you, men are beginning to fall. Not from arrows, not from swords, from the heat. Chroniclers of the Crusades wrote that soldiers could die without a single blow being struck. Today, we know exactly what was killing them. This is the story of the deadliest enemy a crusader ever faced, and how he fought back, with cloth, water, and timing. But first, we need to fix the picture in your head. The movie Crusader wears a full suit of gleaming plate armor, head to toe, a walking man of steel. That armor is real, but it belongs to a different century. Full plate arrives around the 1400s, roughly 2 centuries after the Great Crusades. A real crusader wore something older, and for heat, something worse. A hauberk, a knee-length shirt of tens of thousands of interlocking iron rings hanging from his shoulders. And underneath it, the real problem, the gambeson. A padded jacket, quilted from layer upon layer of linen and wool, thick enough to soften the blow of a mace. It worked like armor, and it also worked like a winter coat. So here's what happens when you wear a winter coat under an iron shirt in one of the hottest places on Earth. The iron sits in the Levant sun and drinks it in until the metal is painful to touch. Your body is making heat too. Hauling 60 pounds of gear turns every single step into work, and work becomes warmth. Modern researchers have put volunteers in armor on treadmills. Wearing it can more than double the energy your body burns with every stride. Your only escape valve is sweat. In that climate, a working man can lose more than a liter of water every hour. But sweat only cools you if it can evaporate. And under a quilted gambeson sealed inside iron, it can't. It just soaks into the padding. Your armor becomes a warm, wet blanket that you cannot take off. Moving at least pushes air across your body. Stand still in the battle line, and even that is gone. Your core temperature begins to climb, and the heat has nowhere left to go. Now watch what happens next, from the inside. At 37 degrees Celsius, you are fine. That is the temperature your body defends every day of your life. As you pass 38, your heart begins to race. It is pumping hot blood out to your skin, desperate to dump the heat overboard. You feel it as exhaustion, dizziness, cramps, legs that stop obeying orders. This is heat exhaustion, and it is your body's last warning. Past 40 degrees, the system starts to fail. Sweating can simply stop. Blood is pulled away from your gut and then from your brain. Confusion sets in. Men wander, mumble, drop their swords without knowing it. This is heat stroke. Somewhere above 40.5 degrees, the proteins inside your cells begin to unravel, like an egg cooking in its shell. Organ by organ, the body shuts down. Without rapid cooling, it kills. So when a chronicler tells you a knight fell without a blow, this is what he was watching. How do you fight an enemy like that? The Crusaders' first weapon was cloth. During the 12th century, knights in the East began wearing a long, flowing cloth over their mail, the surcoat. Often pale, sometimes brilliant white, like the mantles of the Templar order. Pale cloth throws sunlight back before it ever reaches the iron. Bare, dark metal just drinks it in. The loose cloth also shades the mail and traps a thin, moving layer of air, like the flowing robes desert travelers had trusted for centuries. The knights didn't invent desert dress. They borrowed it from the people who had always lived under that sun. Under the armor, the smart knight wore linen. Linen pulls sweat off the skin and dries fast. It was the moisture-wicking base layer, 8 centuries before sports science gave it a name. And when linen wasn't enough, there was a cruder trick. Water, poured straight onto the cloth. A soaked tunic steals heat from the iron and the man as it dries. Artificial sweat working from the outside in. Modern cooling vests for athletes and soldiers run on exactly the same principle. The cutting edge of 2026 is a wet medieval shirt. Then there is the helmet problem. The Great Helm, a sealed iron bucket with 2 narrow eye slits and a scatter of breathing holes. It could stop a lance splinter. It also wrapped burning iron around your head, the one part of you that most needs to stay cool. So knights saved it for the charge. Before and after, it hung from the saddle, and the head stayed bare. Some men chose a kettle hat instead, a wide iron brim, an open face, a steel sun hat. And in the worst moments, men tore their helmets off in the middle of battle just to breathe, gambling their skulls against the arrows. But cloth and helmets only slow the clock. The real currency of desert war was water. A fighting man out there can need several liters a day. Multiply that by 20,000 men and thousands of horses, and a crusade becomes a marching city of thirst. So commanders learned to plan a campaign the way pilots plan fuel, spring to spring, well to well, never more than a day from the next drink. The men spiked their water with wine or vinegar, an old soldier's habit, partly for the taste of foul water, and perhaps to settle unquiet stomachs. And sweat does not just cost water, it costs salt. Lose enough and your muscles cramp and fail, a chemistry no one would understand for another 7 centuries. Get that logistics chain right, and an army walks through a furnace. Get it wrong, and you get Hattin. Which brings us back to July 4th, 1187. The king of Jerusalem, Guy of Lusignan, is marching his entire army across those waterless hills to relieve the town of Tiberias. Saladin has read the land perfectly. His army sits between the Crusaders and the lake. The Crusaders spend the night camped on a dry plateau, thirsty, exhausted, surrounded. At dawn, Saladin's men set fire to the dry summer grass upwind. Smoke and rolling heat pour over soldiers who have not drunk in a day. From the hilltop, the knights can see the Sea of Galilee glittering below them. They will never reach it. The army breaks apart. The king is captured. The relic of the true cross is lost. Within months, Jerusalem itself falls. Thirst and heat did what no siege engine could do. They brought down a kingdom in a single afternoon. 4 years later, another army walks into the same furnace and shows how it should be done. August 1191. Richard the Lionheart marches his army south from Acre, hugging the coast. He moves only in the cool of the early morning. Through the furnace of midday, the army rests. The sea guards his right flank. His fleet shadows the column offshore, carrying the supplies and the sick. Water stops are planned in advance. The pace is slow, deliberate, maddening. Saladin's riders cannot bait him into rushing. Men still collapse from the heat on that march, but the army holds together, reaches Arsuf, fights, and wins. Same sun, same armor, different discipline. That was the entire secret. Over time, the armor itself began to adapt. Helmets sprouted more ventilation holes. Lighter, open-faced designs spread among men bound for the east. But the deeper lessons outlived the armor entirely. A firefighter in turnout gear, a soldier in body armor, a road crew in high summer. They all carry the Crusaders' problem: sealed insulation wrapped around a working body. And in the record heat of July 2026, the safety rules answer it exactly the way Richard did. Work in the cool hours, rest in the shade, drink on a schedule, not on thirst. We call it a work-rest cycle. The knights called it staying alive. So, could a knight actually survive a full day of desert combat sealed inside all that iron? The honest answer is not alone. With shade, water, timing, and cloth, the armor was survivable. Brutal, but survivable. Cut off from water and forced to fight through midday, it became exactly what it looks like: an oven with a man inside. The armor was never really the death trap. The plan was. Steel just raised the price of a bad one. And maybe that is the part worth remembering. 800 years later, the sun has not changed. If anything, it is winning. We face it with sensors and cooling vests instead of linen and vinegar water. But the rules are still the ones the desert taught the knights. Respect the heat. Time your battles, and never let anyone stand between you and the water.